Good morning, United States of America, Chicago. Good afternoon, Canada, Toronto. Good evening, Ukraine, Russia, Belarus, all the Europe, India, and Asia. My greetings to my students, to my friends, and all the experts here. It looks like we have a great diversity and amazing team, and so let's get started our Hangout live session. My name is Oля Zakharova. I have a PhD in Math Models, Methods, and IT in Economics, and also a master's degree in Computer Science. I'm a lecturer and a leading specialist of the Innovation Educational Technology Center at Kharkov National University of Economics, Ukraine. And we are today to discuss the entrepreneurial mindset, tech, and agile methodology with our great presenter from Chicago, Hari. Before we begin, I would like to introduce our really diversity and amazing group. So, Roman, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone, once again. My name is Roman Bogdanovich. I'm a business analyst in an IT outsourcing company in Belarus. So I'm really interested in this session. I'm really ready to know something new from those who have already successfully implemented software methodologies, and really I'm eager to participate in this conversation.
Thanks, Roman. Ali, could you hear us? From Canada. Okay, Dmitry, it's my students. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Dmitry Karlinsky, and I'm a student of Kharkiv National University of Economics. I guess these presentations you're about to show us is gonna be useful for each member of our conversation. Thank you.
Yes, great. Denis from Moscow. Please introduce yourself.
Hello everyone. I'm Denis Beskov. I'm kind of founder of System Analysis School here in Moscow. We celebrate 3 years in May, and I'm looking for experts and for knowledge in software engineering, in software development, and product management. So Olga invited me to this session, so I'm very kind of lucky and happy to hear all of you today.
Thanks, Denis. I think we will have a great time together, and some people watching us online in our live session. And all my greetings to our great presenters today. Hari, please introduce yourself and give us these insights.
Hi, my name is Hari Vedam. I'm a solution engineer. Basically, I work with IT systems in a financial services company. I got exposure to a lot of different methodologies in the company and also throughout my career, and I'm still learning. So keep in mind that there's a lot of research and a lot of my experiences, and if you have some experiences in the presentation, please share it. So this is going to be interactive. I can stop and say, hey, what we can do. From my education background is basically my degree is in economics, surprisingly. I switched my career into IT. And so I have certifications in Unix system administration and SQL Server. Any questions, anything else you guys want to know before we dive into the presentation? Okay, so we'll dive into the presentation. So I'm going to do a screen share of my computer, so just give me 1 second, all right? Can you guys hear me too? Is everybody hearing me okay?
Yes.
All right, thanks guys. Just give me 1 second. Can you guys see my desktop?
Yep.
Okay. Give me 1 second here. Can you guys see the presentation here?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So what I'm getting into is basically the software development lifecycle. There's a lot of different methodologies. So today's agenda is basically we're going to go into the introduction, and the phases in the SDLC. And keep in mind, these are the general phases of the software development lifecycle. Later on in the presentation, you're going to see like different type of models that really go into the software development lifecycle. And there's so many models out there, but I'm really touching on two of them in this presentation. Is basically the waterfall method and iterative and incremental development. So, and then we're going to go into a conclusion, and we're going to do some Q&A. So the basic introduction. So basically the software development lifecycle is a process to develop a quality software product. The phases to these to the SDLC, which I'm going to be referring to it throughout the whole presentation, is basically planning, designing, development, testing, deployment, and maintenance of the software. And these are the 6 main phases, but people have looking around, like they'll do analysis and design in a phase, and they'll, instead of saying development, they'll call it like a code phase. So basically, it's essentially the same thing, but so these are the main concepts behind the SDLC. And like I said, there are a lot of SDLC methodologies that were developed, and we're going to go into that presentation. So let's go into the phases here. So as you can see here, like just by this circle, you do requirement analysis, design, implementation, testing, and evolution. So basically, what that means is, in that evolution phase is also like sort of like the maintenance phase, because you do enhancements to the system until the system becomes obsolete and until you develop a new version of that system. So like the planning phase. So the planning phase is really detail oriented. It's more like defining your requirements and your scope of the project. So it's a process to define and analyze and document the requirements for a software. And that's important because when you're developing the software, there's 2 types of requirements that may be that are needed when you're developing the software. The first requirement is a functional piece, and the functional requirement, what it does is it details how the system should behave. So suppose you want to, after a user logs in, you want to get a message sent to you when the user logs into that system. So that's like the functional piece. The non-functional is actually a little bit more on the quality attributes of the system and also the constraints of the system. So how much availability do you want to your system? How much accessibility do you want to your system? How much, what's the capacity your system is going to take? So that means you want to make sure you define all those characteristics so you're able to have a good performing system overall, and then so you can actually see what levels and what criteria is there to develop that system. So sometimes it gets confusing, and I've had this confusion too, is that we're functional versus non-functional, but keep in mind, it's functional is the behavior and non-functional is the constraints. Any questions at this point, guys?
No, that's clear.
That's clear? Okay. So let's get into the design phase. So the design phase, like I said, the design phase consists of analysis and design, because basically what it means by analysis, you're identifying some risks. You may have risks inside your system that you didn't account for when you do it through the requirement gathering, but you caught it in design. So which is a good thing. So now you know the risks, you identify and you document them, and then those requirements are also mapped. So what I mean by mapped, it's mapped with to a document. So especially in software, that's called a software requirements document, or some people call it a design specification document. People use both. But majority of the times, for if you're doing software, it's more on the it would be referred to as the software requirements. And so once you get those software requirements, the developer you go to the next page, which is development, or the code phase, what people say. And the programmers will develop that software according to the design specification and the software document, and they'll turn it out to the next phase, which is testing. Testing, you're making sure the software functions properly before moving it to production. And testing in itself, I'm very briefly going over testing here, is because testing itself could be its whole presentation when you're doing software development, because there's a lot of requirements, a lot of type of tests that they use. They'll do functional testing, they'll do user acceptance testing before they go into deployment. And so right after they do that thorough testing of the software, they'll go the code will get slotted or approved for a release. So that means, okay, your software is done, you've tested it, and you're ready to go put it on a live system. And after you put it on the live system, the last thing is maintenance of that software. And what they do with maintenance is they may have some minor enhancements to the software, and they do regular patching to the software, which makes sure any security vulnerabilities that were detected later on, they'll do the patching right away to that software. Any questions at this point, too, guys? Before I continue? Because this is like the foundation of really, once you get into a lot of the other models, you'll see like a lot of this stuff repeats itself in the other models. So I want to make sure you really understand this core, because this is, from here on out, the models will actually do a little bit of separation of these 6 main phases. With these 6 main phases, when you get into models, the models are different. So keep in mind, the type of models that you'll see is, just to give a few examples, there's Waterfall, there's Scrum, there's Iterative, Agile Methodology, Iterative and Incremental Development. Also, there's also Spiral, there's Rapid Prototyping, there's Feature-Driven Development, Test-Driven Development. All these models pretty much derived from that main 6 phases. So when we get in more and more into this presentation, you're going to see that, oh wait, we've already saw it at the planning stage, and you could group how things work in the phases. So let's get into some models. So some models, I say Waterfall, and I say Iterative and Incremental and Agile. You hear all these words. So Waterfall is actually it's been being used a lot, and it's more of a traditional approach to software. So as you can see here, it's more like a flow base. So you see the requirements, you see your analysis, you see your design, you see your coding, you see your testing, you see your acceptance. So if you look at, and they broke out some stuff. So like here, when you talk about analysis and the requirements, that when you go back, remember what I said, that's at that planning stage. So really, they're pretty much breaking it out a little bit more and more into details, so they could actually say this is how each of these phases work. But there's a big important key factor here, is that every time a phase is complete, it's referred to as a gate. So sometimes you may have in your system, sometimes when you're doing a development of a system, when you do the requirements gathering, you may have something like, hey, we need like some sort of check in order to see, okay, did you gather all the requirements? Okay, once you gather all the requirements, you pass this gate. So you may have like something prior to analysis gate. Okay, prior to analysis, you got to get those requirements. So then once you pass that gate and so on, and that's how that trickle of that system will work. And keep in mind, the software development lifecycle, this is an important fact, it's actually a subset from the system development lifecycle too. And that's important because of the fact that when you're developing huge IT systems, the complexity of the projects are going to be long. And that's where, like, this waterfall method, it has some advantages and disadvantages, which goes into the next points here. Our next point is basically the waterfall method's advantages. There's minimal planning. Really, there's not much of planning around it, but the thing is that you have clearly defined start and end phases in the process. And so that's how they manage the project. And so they're like, oh, we cannot, like for example, is that we can't go to the next phase unless you give us our software requirements document. So unless you have that software requirements document, they can't go design the system. So that's where that gating comes into play, to make sure that those things are clearly done, the requirements are taken care of, and they pass it along smoothly. But the problem is, when you're doing longer projects, when you're doing big projects especially, they'll take a long time. And this is where the disadvantage comes into this model, is there's really not much any flexibility in this process, but there's a high cost to it, because there's a lot of administration they have to do inside this process, and everybody has to get trained and make sure everything goes smoothly. So, okay, things are taking a long time. Things are eventually, taking a while. So that's where Agile comes about, the iterative and incremental development. And keep in mind, a lot of these phases in iterative incremental development, they happen in parallel. The requirements and analysis will be happening, design and implementation will be happening. Then they go test the release, and then they do the system test, and they'll do it all over again. So the key thing though with iterative and incremental development though is that if you have a big project, it's going to be broken up into smaller parts. And those smaller parts will be usually referred to as iterations. So every iteration that you do will have a new feature to the software. So, which is important. That's good. But then what happens in this type of development is after you do the iteration, you also get immediate feedback from your customers, which helps the developers to learn, okay, we got this feedback for a feature A, they didn't like it. Why didn't they like it? So the customers will go back and tell them, okay, this feature was not flowing smoothly, or we didn't understand how this feature was working inside the system. So they go back and do another iteration of that same product, and they'll get that same feedback again. And the key thing here is there's constant releases to the system. If you look back at the waterfall model, like I said, it's clearly defined. And once you have that clearly defined, and once you get slotted, you have to make sure your project hits every single deadline, so then you can get it to that point and go to the release. Here, since you're constantly releasing and iterating in the system, you're going to see a lot of big changes happening at the same time. So that's good, right? But then, okay, we're doing this iterative and incremental development. That's the main idea. So that's where Agile falls into. Agile is actually iterative incremental development. And I read so much, I'm like, that's a key fact here, is because it's nothing new. It's really nothing new. And just to give a brief history on Agile methods have been around since the early 90s. If you think about it, some of these here, like Scrum, Crystal Clear, Extreme Programming, Feature-Driven Development, Dynamic System Developments, methods, they've been around. So in around 2001, February, all these methodologies and all these programmers, they created the Agile Manifesto. In Utah, in Snowboard, Utah, they all got together in February 2001 and wrote the manifesto. And here's the manifesto in the next page here. So Agile Manifesto is basically saying they want individuals' interactions over processes and tools, working with software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. So this is the core of Agile methodology. This is the core belief for anything you're doing in Agile development. So these things are very important when you're developing a system, because the fact that when you go to companies, a lot of big companies they're more traditional in the fact that they rather do the waterfall method versus the Agile, because of the fact that they may not have the capabilities of on their team in order to keep up with the pace of Agile. So keep in mind this idea and notion of Agile methodology comes about, and you saw in the earlier slide how many methods are there, and I'm not even going into it because there's so many. There in themselves can be a presentation because of how they implement and how they do variation of things. But at the end of the day, if you think about it, it's pretty much the main SDLC. It's pretty much you're doing the planning, you're doing the analyzing, you're doing the designing, you're doing the development, you're doing the testing, and you're doing the maintenance. So that's a key presence to this presentation, is these methodologies are there, but there's a core foundation to the developing software. So let's get into Agile development. So Agile development is the same thing, is breaking tasks into breaking big tasks into smaller tasks with very minimum planning. And you get the constant feedback from your customers and frequent releases to the system. So when they're doing frequent releases, when you're getting your constant feedback to the customers, that's where those iterations come in. That's where you change the software. That's where you add new features. And once you start adding new features, you're getting that immediate feedback from your customers and saying, okay, hey, this feature wasn't working. What happened? So you have to figure out what went wrong during iteration A or iteration C, just to make sure that they're able to have a functioning system. So, but the key thing is there's great advantages and disadvantages to the agile methods that I've seen. It's great for early problem detection. Very good. You can catch the problems easy, and you can do and also you could accommodate change requests to the system or the software. But the disadvantages that come into play here is you need to have heavy documentation, and integrating between iterations can cause issues and heavy customer involvement. So if you don't hear back from your customer in a week, you're not really doing a traditional agile process. You need to have that open communication with your customer in order to get that feedback, in order to learn how the system is behaving, and then from there you can actually tie in and iterate through that process. So this was like a really short presentation in a sense, just to give you a flavor of what's going on. I want to know your experiences. I want to know your what you have learned and what you have done in terms of agile development. So I'm going to take off the screen share here.
Thanks, Hari. I think it's a really great insight for all of us, and we will share our experience as well. And I think we'll discuss some questions. Okay, Roman, I think you have a nice experience with Agile Methodologies. Could you please share some maybe knowledge, maybe some feedback from this great presentation?
Well, yeah, it was a great overview, and I agree that Agile has many benefits. Not only over Waterfall, but in general. But we also apply this methodology. We also use Scrum as our main methodology on our projects. And I would like to discuss the adoption phase, actually, namely collection of the feedback. Do you do it only on the sprint demo, for example, or do you have some other structured way to collect user feedback, to manage this feedback and organize it?
Well, it depends, like because I've heard in Scrum when you're collecting feedback, you do that iteration, so you have one sprint. So after that 4-week sprint, you go back and you talk to your customer, and the customer gives that immediate feedback, and they collect it. You collect it, and then you see what worked and what didn't work, and that's how they have that point system in Scrum, from what I've heard of. Basically, after the point system, if there's something that didn't work and they didn't like the feature, they'll toss that feature out and they'll go back into continuing the development, because they've got that feedback from the customer already. They've already seen the features that are coming into play. They could just say, okay, this feature won't work because of the fact that this customer didn't like the previous feature because it was a built offset of that.
Mm-hmm. And how do you manage the requirement change? Do you have some requirements management system, or do you trace the requirements?
Managing the requirements. That's a good question, because I've done more of the first, more like the planning and the analysis behind it, but I haven't gotten more into the change stuff, because that's a different area. But from my experience and what people have told me too, is that they just once they get that immediate feedback, they'll just implement it in their next iteration. So it's pretty easy in that aspect, that you're not going through like that traditional change management where compared to in Waterfall, that you have to, this change, that we need to change this system more when you get into the design phase, but they can't do it because they've already had clearly defined the requirements at that point, and they're already going to testing, where when you have that immediate feedback, you could actually just do that change within the next iteration and how they set it up. That's a little bit tough to answer, because I don't have too much experience in that. But how do people do it, though? That's a good question to ask too. How do you guys do it there? Like how?
Yeah, I asked this question actually because I see that there is a challenge on it, because from my experience, from the experience in the company I see that this process is a bit overlooked, because applying the Agile methodology, we try to implement it more and more. We try to manage this feedback. We try to make customer happy. But sometimes I see that the projects are off the original way. I mean, we need to be clear about the project goals, the initial goals. And when the feedback is received, when we even after we have managed, we have elicited all the requirements during the about the requests, the change requests. That they might be not quite related to the original goals, because this is the very important point, and this makes adds to the risk of having the scope creep. So my point is that collecting the feedback is a very important phase during the agile development. And what we need to pay attention very carefully is the project goals, because it's very easy to get off the road and to start replying to any customer requests, start implementing them, adding them to the next sprint, and finally get the huge backlog for thousands of hours.
Right. I see what you're saying. No, you're right, and I think that's where the daily, because if you're doing Scrum, you have daily Scrum meetings. That's where you clearly define the goals in the daily Scrum meetings. You have those goals defined. You get that feedback, and then you incorporate it back into the project, and then you go back and do that set. You do another sprint on top of it, right? So that goes to your next sprint, depending on how those goals are clearly defined. From my experience, that's what people tell me, because I met 2 Scrum Masters in our company, and they told me that in order for clearly to define the project, you have to have those daily Scrum meetings, and then that's where you address those issues, like so you don't get off track for the project.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Denise, probably could you
we have some questions. One more question, Roman.
Sorry, Olga. I'm just wondering whether Denise could add something, because I need that he also has experience. If
say that
possible.
again? I didn't hear the question. What's the question?
Yeah, I'm referring to Denis Beskov, because I believe he also has experience in it, and I'm really interested to know his opinion.
Yes, he has experience, and he has a question. Denise, please ask your question and share your experience with us.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Talking about requirements management, I would say that I studied a lot of information about this topic, and I found that a Agile approach is quite simple and effective, because they say that every requirement or user story have some states. Either it is implemented or is it planned. Or if you want to change something, add something, then you change the user story, or just delete the old one, create a new one, and go back to planning. So I think the approach is quite straightforward and excellent for many projects. And when I teach analysts, I recommend them to use Scrum approach whenever it is possible, just to avoid the classic heavy requirements management.
Right. So, but I've heard it also in the Agile approach, and just to jump on your point a little bit too, is that, and please correct me here, Dennis, is that with the heavy documentation, so from that requirements gathering phase, so when you do those user stories, that comes, like I said, it comes from like the daily Scrum meetings that you guys have. So when you have the daily Scrum meetings, you get that new user story, you compare the two, so you just go with the new one and throw out the old one, right? I'm asking that question too. That's what I've heard.
Usually we discuss user stories at the planning and demonstration meetings, not at the daily scrums, because daily scrums are supposed to be devoted to discussion of what have been done tomorrow and what the person is going to do today. So the basic idea of Scrum is that you fix sprint backlog for a sprint, and you don't change the requirements you've taken into the sprint.
Okay.
So my question was about the slides. I mentioned that there was saying that when you choose Agile approach, you have to do heavy documentation, and it's kind of contradicts the things I have known about Agile approach in theory and in practice. So can you please?
Because from what I was reading too, and this is I just read this, and I've talked to a lot of people, and they were telling me that heavy documentation comes from that what you're developing in that first planning stage. That's really what it's referring to. If you don't document those, if you don't document everything properly, once you get later on into the development phase, you may run into problems because of the fact that things weren't clearly defined, and that only happens with your customer interaction, your customer involvement. If you don't have that, and all of a sudden you have one Scrum meeting, and all of a sudden 2 weeks later you have another Scrum meeting, you're not really doing traditional Agile approach. You're not doing the traditional Agile method. So you need to be on top of it, and that's what a lot of people were saying when I was reading, was that the heavy documentation was a big downfall to the Agile approach. And it works in more of and people, and please correct me, is like I haven't found. I've been looking too. I've been trying to research a little more. Is that successfully in enterprises have been having a hard time implementing this approach. So to go back and say it has worked, there's been a lot of case studies where it has worked in small and mid-sized businesses. Do you agree with that, Dennis?
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. Any other questions, guys? Let's. This is a good conversation we're having. Let's. Any questions? Any comments? You're teaching me stuff too. Your experiences, I'm learning from all of you too.
I have a question, Hari. How do you think a business analyst role and software developer? So here is a lot of business analysts, and you are a software developer. Is it easy for you to speak as business analyst?
It's a business analyst. Wow, if you think about all this presentation and the roles that are really defined in this presentation, business analysts take the requirements, right? They really take the requirements, depending on the organization too. From our organization, the business analyst, the system analyst takes the requirements, and then from there it goes to an application analyst who does like the actual clearing of the phases and the actual application, looking at the application, and then it will come to us. From the business side, it's more from the clearly defining the requirements, talking to the customer, making sure what they want. But it's been a while since I've done business analysis. Please forgive me. It's been a long time. So, what are your experiences as business analysts? What have you encountered? Something you must have encountered something similar to the SDLC. Any one of you guys can share, please?
Yes, it's interesting. What's the problem business analyst has then he do his work? Yes, with maybe with software developers, maybe with customers, maybe with goals, maybe with something else. What's the problem you come up with, Roman, in your work?
Well, starting from this software development lifecycle, I would say that in Scrum, the big and the very first challenge the BA faces is the lack of time, because there is a contradiction. We need to have some documentation, we need to have some requirements analyzed, but we need to start fast. And it happens almost every time. So basically the longest time you have before the next sprint is 2 weeks, the current sprint, to analyze, document, collect the requirements for the next sprint. So sometimes it's easy when the customer is available, sometimes it's a bit challenging. So I would say that this is the first, not a problem, but challenge. Speaking about the relationships or some problems with the other stakeholders, other players, I would say that it's really, it depends, but usually it's the same. So there might be some administrative issues, some communication, collaboration issues, but it's absolutely the same for any other role. And speaking about the problems with the business problem, with the business domain, it's also, I would say, the time is the first challenge, because you need to dig into some new domain first and to start work on the initial phases. That's probably the first that comes to my mind.
Okay. Okay. Well, in my role, I faced something similar because the problems I've had too is because we do a lot of I do a lot of traditional waterfall development. Actually, I haven't touched much of any Agile. In the last two shops that I worked for, I worked at another company prior. They also did the waterfall. So I just started learning about Agile, and I did a lot of startups. So I actually got exposure to the lean startup method. Actually, that's how and that's actually part of the Agile methodology too. If you that what Eric Ries and what Steve Blank also talks about.
That's great.
And they talk about it the way they talk about it. I think like if you're really just to get the intro is probably the lean startup is better than the Steve Blank approach. Because Steve Blank's approach is more on customer development. It's really focusing on the customer. But if you really never had any exposure to lean startup or any agile methodologies at all, Eric Ries defines it better in his book because of the fact that it gives you that whole introduction. But when I got here is that the problems I face is, like I said, you're exactly correct, Raman, is that it's hard to get people. It's very hard, especially when you're doing a system and you need to know, hey, the business requirement says this, but then you got another technical requirement that's different. They're contradicting each other, but you can never get those stakeholders in the same room. It actually delays the project. I've had experiences like that too. Any other stories? Any other stuff you guys want to share that you experienced?
Denise, do you have some experience with Agile methodology? Maybe some challenges what you have at your work?
Well, I can add that I used Agile for some area like user interface design. A year ago, we had a project of 3 user interface designers, and we built a prototype for social mobile network. And at some moment, our customer changed his mind and changed the scale on the time frame from 2 months to 2 weeks.
Oh wow!
So we had to change the way work being done, and we introduced daily Scrum meetings in Skype. We met every day as to observe what has been done from the other day and find out any problems that designers met. So I was kind of Scrum Master because I'm not very comfortable with typical project manager role, and I like the facilitation of Scrum Master, that the way he doesn't interfere with the work being done, he just helps people to communicate, to move on. So it was kind of a great experience, and I'm looking to learn from Olga how she implemented Scrum in education area.
Actually, that's interesting to know too, Olga. Yes, share your experiences with Scrum in the education area. It's actually a good. I'd like to know how you're.
I really. Thank you. I really love Agile because it's a great approach, and then you know how to use it, and then you experiment with it a lot of time. And I'm use Agile not only as software developer and working in team, yes, and also in marketing. It's something new for these people business people who work in marketing. Then you say them, oh, hey people, let's do Agile idea. Let's get started with this approach. And also, I really use it in education. And here is my students who really work with me this 3 or 4 months, Dima. And I think he can share some experience, maybe some idea why our lessons by our classes not as usual classes. Then we use Agile, when they use lesson learn, some demo, some sprints, and something like that. Dima, please share your idea and your experience, how you learn my business process modeling course. This
Yes, so the whole course is divided in sprints. As it was said, it's just about 4 sprints, which is every sprint is also divided in 4 weeks, and each week is divided into smaller different homeworks, like very easy ones, but there are a lot of them. Like what was the last one? Self-presentation on camera. You should so the main thing is to in 1 minute you have to, if you, for example, if you meet a guy you want to talk with, you want to share your idea with, for example, in elevator or something, you have just 1 minute. So the homework is to create a video on which you describe your main advantages of your project to the mentor, to the human you want to communicate with. So it's like one of it. The rest are interesting too, such as startup, for example. Our upcoming homework, as I said to you. So yeah, it's basic my rational sequence.
Cool. Interesting.
Yes, so my students know something about Agile, about startups, about this interesting approach, and we have here Roman. Here is our expert, and he gave some presentation for our students, and he can maybe give his feedback about this, my experiments with Agile in education. Roman, please tell us something.
Well, I learned was the interesting way how you organize the work in general and how you collected the results. So basically, this approach of having sprints, I guess it could help, first of all, you, I guess, as a teacher, because you could manage all this educational process, and the students also were quite clear with what they have done, what they were going to do. So I guess the results were quite positive. So that's my point of view.
Yes, it's like an independent expert say some words about my teaching approach, and really it's interesting because my students can monitor their results, because after each week they have some tools like lesson learned. Then they write their idea about this week, what they learned, what was the challenge, something like that. After maybe months, they read again their lesson learned and amazed themselves. Wow, I know these things now, and before I don't know it, because people really forgot all these things. Then they know it. They think that all other people know it. For example, right now we speak about Agile. It's easy for us, yes, but for other people who don't know this methodology, who not use it. It's really difficult. And my question maybe to our great experts, what is your opinion? How to implement maybe this Agile methodology in different processes? What's maybe the first step in this idea? What do you think?
Well, from my perspective, it's having buy-in from all parties. That's the way I've seen Agile work in a lot of other companies and people who I've talked to. And Dennis and Roman, please correct me. What are your experience behind it too? Because that's my experience. People have told me it's a group effort. It's all or nothing. You can't have one person who wants to do Agile, 2 people want to do Agile and 5 people don't. That all 10 people have to agree that they want to do it. So that's my experience. Guys, Roman and Dennis?
Yeah, I agree with the buy-in point. I also think that what is really important is understanding how applying this approach will solve the business problems or simply help achieve the objectives.
Okay.
What else? Probably understand how exactly you could implement this process, because I even read that this approach was applied in the church, which was quite interesting for me to learn that once we simply started to have some daily scrums, what they have done and what they are going to do, and what I learned is that it worked. So basically, understanding how we are going to solve the problem or help to achieve the objective, and understanding that everyone will be on top of it, I guess that's the starting point.
And as we touched some question about startups, I think all the people interested in this, we have some question from Ali. He was wondering if the group had thoughts on recruiting or retaining co-founders. What do you think about this interesting issue? What is your experience in this?
That's a tough question because your co-founder, to recruit and retain them is the agreement. They're like family. It's pretty much like a family. You have to have a strong bond with them, and once you have that strong bond, then you're able to talk about the other issues of money and equity. From my experience, I've had more people quit. I've had more people quit on me than actual have a nice co-founder saying, hey, you know, this is what I want to do. But and it can't. Yeah, right. I agree with you, Ali. It can go wrong very quick. So it's a trust. You have to really. It's a trust issue. You really have to know your co-founder. You have to get to know them. It's like. Pretty much what people have said, and what I've gone to a couple of talks, is it's like a marriage. You know, you have to have a healthy relationship, keep on going. Have I split equity? I have not gotten to that phase. I'm not an expert in that one. Any other experiences, Ramon or Dennis? Do you guys had experience like this?
Sorry, I've just missed the question because I was returning home.
He talks about like recruiting co-founders and retaining and recruiting co-founders and splitting equity with them as a startup.
I'm really sorry. Repeat the question. Yeah. Denise, please go on.
Yeah, I can share my experience about recruiting co-founders, because for many years I was dreaming about having some business partners to start some business. Then 3 years ago we started our school, and there were 3 of us starting. Then the idea of how we became partners is that we knew each other for a long time online. We had some specific professional forum. And through these communication, through these years, we understood that we had some shared business values in terms of software engineering, in terms of IT projects, on what we're going to do, what is our mission, and so on. But still, after one year of practice, one of our partners left us, and he decided to start his own Agile Development company.
Exactly.
So, and 2 years later, the other partner left me too, because he decided to start a consulting company. So I just can add some plus ones to Harry about that. You can just hire a co-founder out from the corner, maybe something. You just have to look around for years, maybe, if you want to meet a real partner, not just kind of people you can hire and fire. So the idea that you have to grow business networks, meet people in person, understand their values, and then try some projects to understand if we are going to work together.
Right. It goes back to the point what I was saying about, like, it's your co-founder. It's like a marriage. You need to be healthy. It needs to be very healthy, and like you said, you go into the politics of people leaving, and it stinks. But then at the same time, you have to be strong and go back out there and look for that same person again and work with them on small projects, and then from there that relationship builds, and you're able to have a good co-founder.
I see some kind of question from Oli. In my experience, when I founded partnership, I understood in some years that I was kind of marketing guy or sales guy in this partnership, and my colleagues, my partners, served as production engineering parts. So it was kind of a mystery for me because I always thought that I'm kind of engineer, and in this kind of specific kind of venture, I just figure out that kind of sales and marketing person. So I was the selling guy, and my partners were kind of production team.
I think that's the best combination.
Yes, thanks. And I know that Hari is really amazing in mentoring startups. he participates in different activities connected to startups, and I'm wondering what lesson learned from you from this experience. What's the main insights maybe from this?
Well, a lot of the lessons that I've learned is you want to have a good team. You know, you need to have a good team to achieve that business goal, achieve that great product. And two, make sure you know your market. You know, understand what's out there. You know, do a lot of analysis before you go develop the product and all of a sudden it doesn't work, or the products have already been out there. But if it's already out there, make it unique. Make it unique that people do come to your product and say, hey, you know, I like this product better than product B. Those are my lessons that I've learned. And I think one food of thought that I'm going to give everybody is that if you think about toothpaste, the simple, you guys, toothpaste, right? Brushing your teeth. There's so many brands of toothpaste out there. It's essentially the same thing. You know, they probably have a minor chemical formula difference, but they sell it. So it's the same thing with any web industry. Like, there's so many websites that are out there. Make sure your website is unique enough that you're able to get the partnerships and that are things that are available for you to succeed in a business. Those are my lessons.
It's really great lesson. And when we speak about the team, and you mentioned the first one, yes, we speak today about the feedback and how you can maybe organize with feedback in startup team. What's the challenge? Is it?
The challenge is if you're not clearly communicating to your team, you'll have a problem getting a successful product out there. It's all about clear communication. It's not just in startups, though. It's in any area. If you even go work at a big company who's established, and you work with like a team of 50 people, and that's a lot of people, and they don't clearly communicate the ideas, it's a problem because it affects the cohesion and it affects the achieving the business goals, and you don't want that happening. So that's the clear challenges that I've had with a lot of my startups that I've worked with. And plus, people decided to, just like what you went through, Dennis, people decided to quit, go on their own, and do something else too. So those are the big challenges. You got to make sure they're engaged enough too. Engagement is important, in my opinion.
Yes, it's really interesting. And what do you think is a distributed team can be successful?
That's a good question. I've had successes with good teams, but the teams that I really had successes with, it's more smaller teams. It's more smaller teams that consist of 5 to 10 people at most. You know, but it's hard when you're like at a big company where you're going to be dealing with teams that are 20, 25 people on a team, but in so many different perspectives. But the thing is, it's like basically doing data analysis. You know, right? You take all those perspectives and find the common element, and then you go back and say, here, this is what I commonly got. This is what we're gonna go with. So that's the way my experiences have worked. Guys, Raman or Dennis, do you have anything else to add, please? Or anybody in this group? These are my experiences.
Well, I don't have so
people
much.
Thinking, I'm wondering.
Sorry for interrupting. Please go on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just saying
okay,
that
I'm wondering how.
there is a small delay.
Okay, it's distributed. Okay, Harry, I'm wondering with one idea, with how many people you daily interact with? So maybe in your team you have a lot of people, but in real communication, and how you communicate with Skype, or maybe if you really have in one maybe room, yes, or
In a typical day, I could be talking to anywhere between 10 to 15 people in a typical day. And that's a small number. Depending on how active the project is, it could even go up to 20, 25 people just to get an answer. Just to get one answer. I've gone through that problem. So that's the thing. That's with any level of organization. If you're at a big organization, even a mid-sized organization, it's just try to get that answer. And if it's not an answer you don't like and it's not the right answer, you have to keep doing the research.
And what tool do you use in this communication? Is it Skype, or maybe it's real face-to-face communication?
I use email, and I prefer face-to-face communication with talking to people because I'm typically in the area where I can just go ask that guy the question and take notes, and then come back and it transcribes those notes. Because we're so close-knit. Like the team where I'm located, we're so close-knit, I can just go walk to the other building and say, hey, I need to talk to you about something. So it's better that way. I try to avoid email as possible because of the fact that you're not getting that face-to-face interaction with that person. Unless it's absolutely important that I need an answer, I'll do an email. But if not, I will go face-to-face to that person and talk to them.
Yes, great. Roman, please ask your question now.
No, that actually wasn't a question. I just wanted to say that I have small experience in working in a dedicated team, but as only a part of this team, we had on our current project that has already finished. We've implemented 18 sprints with a dedicated team. So there was also 7 to 12 people. And that was quite successful due to the very intense communication. Certainly we had it via Skype, and we really tried to bring up all issues, all questions to the entire team, so that everyone was on top of what everyone else was doing. So that was very important, and all the problems, we tried to discuss all the problems within the whole team. I guess that was quite successful. So my point is that working in a dedicated team requires as much transparency as possible. So
yes, I agree. But it's hard to get that transparency if you're working with a lot of different people, though. You know, if you're working like with 30, 35 people on that team, it's very hard. But you got to make that effort to get that transparency. I think that's the key thing here, or else the project doesn't go as well.
Yes, thanks. And Denise, do you have any question now? Maybe some idea to add?
I can add that the last 3 years I was looking into startup scene here in Moscow in Russia, and I found out that there is an area of knowledge called product management that is quite kind of new for the whole world, and especially for Russia. It's a bridge between engineering and marketing. So historically, here we had quite good engineers, and we have some still, but we are not very good with marketing. So I'm personally working at introducing best marketing practices, like you mentioned, Lean Startup, customer development, and so on, into Russian development market. So we are starting a product management school with Yandex in June. So we have some initiatives like product camp Moscow and product camp St. Petersburg that going every year.
Oh, so, that's awesome. That's awesome. I think also you should take a look at Startup Weekend. They're a global phenomenon, actually. They're globally. I don't know if they're out in Moscow. Just take a look at them too. It's a good initiative. I actually went out there. I went out there like July of 2012, and it was a good experience. It went from you coded all weekend, and after you code your prototype, you go pitch it to investors. and that's where that product management comes into. You pitch it to investors. After you pitch it to investors, if you win, you'll go to the next round and pitch it to a higher level venture capital firm, essentially, at the end of the day. So, just I don't know if that's out there in Russia. So take a look at it if you do get a chance, Dennis. It was a good experience for me.
Yeah, we have some hackathons here in Moscow and in other cities that bring together people with ideas, some visionaries, and developers. The whole product management story is about that a lot of talented engineers start to build something, but then they suddenly fail, they waste their time onto products that have no success, and it's very disappointing for all of us. So I'm looking for investing some time and energy into building more successful products, so people could see what they've done brings some value to the people, to customers, and brings some money.
Definitely.
And it's a really interesting topic for discussion about pitch, because Hari, I think you have an amazing experience in this case. For example, my students, I ask them to pitch themselves, to do like a short self-presentation, and it's not easy for them. For example, Dima, tell us some words about this self-presentation. Why it's so hard to do self-presentation for my students?
Because it's really hard, because it's hard to find useful information about yourself, about your best advantages, and include it in just 1 minute, and to express, to show it as best as you can, because we have to show it on camera, as I thought. But there is a way, there is a there is a way you can do it without camera, but a lot of our students have decided to make it with it, so it's hard to compare all those things and include it in the best way together. So that's why I guess.
So in my subject, my students have a lot of challenges. They have to present themselves, introduce themselves. It's really hard for them. Present some ideas of them, yes, and they have a short time to this short deadline, and a lot of other challenges. For example. It's not easy. Some of our students watching us online, and they not join our session because it's not easy for them. But I try to participate in this session because I think only practice can help this issue. And I ask Hari, what is your experience, and how maybe you can remind your first speech and share some secrets about it and about your experience.
I actually just did a presentation, what I just showed you guys. It's the same presentation I did at work. It was nerve-wracking. It was a lot of butterflies, but I got over it. I practiced. It's just practice. Take a look at your presentation over and over again, and also sit with somebody who can actually critique you before you actually go into your major audience, and they'll critique you and say, hey. Because they're also the ones who are actually listening to your presentation, trying to understand, and they'll also give you feedback. Hey, I don't understand this point in your presentation. Can you go a little bit further into it? And that feedback is crucial, because then if that one person doesn't understand it, the whole group won't understand. So it gets you that's the most best way to actually get that feedback for the presentation, and from there you could build up your confidence. And actually just doing more and more presentations is the best way to do it. And it's been nerve-wracking. It's been nerve-wracking for the first presentation, but you get over it. You slowly, over time, you get over it. It's just the practice. Oh, I guess she left.
Perhaps there are some connection issues.
Yeah, I think so too. Oh, she's back. So yeah.
Ola, do you hear us?
Yes, yes, I'm here. Do you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yes, now I'm here, and I don't know what was the issue, but I'm wondering about your first experience with your pitch, Hari. Could you maybe share some story about your first pitch?
My first pitch? Oh wow, that's that hasn't happened yet. In all honesty, I haven't pitched, but I've done more presentations on just basic stuff. But actual pitching, I have not done. But for my first pitch, well, if you think I've done it like amongst a group of people, like 5 or 6 people pitching an idea, but that's not really, in all honesty, that's not really that hard to me because of the fact that in 30 seconds, I try to get the person to understand the product, and if they don't, that means I've already lost them. So I have been known to be quite verbose, like very, like, I talk too much, so I try to limit it so that people can understand it from a pitching standpoint. Because my experiences with going to pitching events is a lot of entrepreneurs that I've noticed is they just get up there, they pitch their product, and they show a demo. So right after they show the demo, it's they pretty much let go of and talk to the venture capitalists. So that's my experience. But I have not had a successful first pitch yet. I have to be honest. I'm working on it. I'll let you know actually after that happens.
And what you learned from it, maybe some suggestion from my students how they can they start, because they really hesitate to start this, and even preparation, even some they avoid this right now. But I'm going to encourage them to do this right now, because then they meet real investors or some very important person. They have nothing to say, I think.
Right. Like the best pitch is, keep in mind, is some people say like you could do it for like a minute, but my suggestion is you should know what you're saying in less than 30 seconds, because the fact that pretty much, okay, at 30 seconds, if there's no reaction to the to what you're giving in your idea, the pitch isn't going too well. If he's asking too many questions, which people will do, which it's a good thing, that means there's some intrigue there. So, but in order to get to that level, practice. It's just really practice and practice. It's do it between you, then go to then do it with a bigger audience, and finally go to the VC and pitch the idea.
Yes, and we have one question from Ali. He asked, how much do you guys know about the VC process from their side?
I don't know too much about it. I do know a couple of VCs, but I've never asked them about it, so I can't comment on that. What about you guys' experience? Dennis, Rahman, or you guys have experience with any of this?
I would love to know what is VC.
VC stands for venture capital. Venture capital. Okay. They invest in small businesses, actually.
I can tell that 2 years ago I was in a travel startup, and I invested my own money into it. And we had some back-end prototype, and we were looking for investors. So several times we went to big tycoons. One of them was even real estate tycoon Sergei Polonsky. And we asked for money. We were kind of small top management team. We had like 15 minutes maybe to present the idea and to bring some attention of these people. We were suddenly, it was kind of shock because we were interrupted. The investors switched the speakers. They just pointed finger and asked another team member to continue the speaking. So they were kind of stress testing us. If we understand the idea in the same way, do we have a common vision, and have we thought through all the all the maybe some obstacles on our way. And later I found out that if you want to get some funding, having some team is not enough. You have to build prototype and get the first feedback from the market. At the very best, you have to have some customers, not paying customers, but still some customers that make sure that demonstrate that your products have some value for the market. So the idea costs nothing. Business plan is just a document with some random numbers, and nobody truly believes these numbers until they see potential or actual customers.
Right.
Yes, and thanks, Denis. And we have some idea from Ali. He asked because we often make assumption in our pitches about the VCs and how they work. Sometimes it fails because you are selling apples and they are one pears, and it's really true. And I think it's really good advice to learn from their not only from your investors, yes, and learn to try to understand these people. Like you try to understand your customers, your goals, your business. You may understand. I try to understand my students with I work, and you can try to understand your investors and what they like, what their maybe area of they interested in, and something like that. And I have one interesting statement, and I'm going to ask you what is your attitude to it. That investor invest in your eyes. What do you think about it? Is it really true or not in your experience?
I don't know. Actually, I don't know the answer. Anybody else want to tackle this one? I really don't know. I really don't know the answer. Could you imagine you as an investor, and what's maybe your priority? How you will estimate the maybe idea, maybe startup? What amazed you, and what you will invest in your business? If I do get into that level, I'd probably invest in like more like healthcare stocks, healthcare companies. That's a growing area. You need healthy people to produce work, right? That's pretty much what it boils down to. So there's a lot of good healthcare companies, and also educational technologies. Educational technologies are really changing. You think of like what Coursera and Udacity, what they're doing. I wouldn't mind investing in companies like that because they're actually doing good work. They're actually disrupting the education market. That's important. If I do get into that level of pitching and venture capital, which I hope so, I do, but that's where I'm at right now. What I'm interested in, those type of two areas. Anybody else? What about you guys?
Well, actually, I'm not also as rich on that experience, so I'm still only starting to move this way, and hope to learn more in the upcoming years.
And what is the idea? In what field you will like to invest if you have a lot of money? Roman.
Well, of course, that would be the first point is to understand, to know exactly on what you are going to spend your money on. So how you are going to get your money back, when. So probably a structured business plan won't work, but at least understanding of whether the market niche exists at all, and how the business idea is, to what extent it is ready. So how the people to whom I would give my money to are going to solve the problem, or are going to, well, create this product and cover this market niche. So this understanding would be quite important for me, and that's basically the first what I would pay my attention to.
Yes, great statement. And Denise, what is your idea in what maybe field you're willing to invest? Okay, Denise. do you hear us? Maybe Dima, what is your idea? In what field you are going to invest if you have a lot of money?
I don't know. I would invest in the project if I saw clearly the customer. This project would be about to no the need. This project would be about to solve to this customer, and how global would be the project, how many countries, how many people would it can to would be able to get, and how stable would it be. So it's would be main criteria for me, I guess.
Yes, thanks. We all have some assumption how to do it well, but you guys really are amazing because today you invest your time in education. We help our students, we help our community to maybe learn from each other and get some lessons learned. And Hari, thank you very much for this great presentation and really awesome conversation that we have right now. And I ask all guys maybe say some last words, some thank you to our presentators, to our discussion, and maybe we will we will have some meetings, maybe once more.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Always interesting. Always, you learn from one another, especially with how technology is changing, how we're embracing it now with Skype and Google Hangouts and everything. We could actually exchange ideas more fluidly, so which is good. I enjoyed it. Thank you so much, guys. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot too from all of you, and now I can go back and use that knowledge in my job. Thanks, Ali. I appreciate it.
And really, we have a great diversity. We have Hari from United States, Chicago. We have Denise from Moscow, Russia. We have Roman from Belarus. I am and Dima from Ukraine, and Ali from Canada. So great diversity, and our this nice live chat with help technology. Google Technologies help this Google Hangout. And Denise, could you add something to our conversation, and we will end our meeting?
Well, actually, it was my first experience with such kind of distant and distributed Google Hangouts. So thank you very much for this experience. Then I learned some new interesting questions from our presenter, from Hari. Thank you for your experience, and I think we can meet some other time online in other presentations devoted to software engineering, software requirements, development, design, and maybe building better products.
For sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. Dima, please tell us some words about your lesson learned from our meeting.
Yeah, I want to say, firstly, I want to thank to all the guys for sharing their experience, and especially Hari for giving advices mostly about Teach, and thanks for helping us how to classify startup. Is it useful or is it useless? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dima and Roman.
Yeah, I also enjoyed this session. I believe and strongly support the initiative. So I think that having more and more iterations of such educational sessions will help to make them more effective, more productive. And thank you, guys. That was really interesting conversation. I was really glad to meet you, to have acquainted with you. So I believe and I hope we meet some other time.
For sure. Thanks, guys. I enjoyed it most. This was Ola touched everybody in pretty much in every geographic region for this conversation, which is great. It's really great, guys. Yeah, let's exchange ideas again. I'm on LinkedIn, guys. You guys can add me on LinkedIn. If you guys are on LinkedIn, go ahead, send me an ad, and we'll definitely keep in touch.
Thank you, guys. It's a really nice conversation. I will wait maybe your idea about our next meeting. You will share it with me, and we will maybe discuss it once again with our really great, amazing community. Thank you very much. Thank you, Hari, for your presentation, for your time. And I guess you will do really right invest in our education system while 12. Thank you very much. See you online next time.
For
See
sure.
you.
Bye.
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 Bye.